신경 쓰지 않을래 나도 그럼 어때 So what Let go
한숨 그 안에 많은 걱정이 숨어있는 고민들만해 너는 이미 다 알고 있지 이 일의 중간에 포기하고 싶은 순간에 넌 크게 소리 질러봤어 what 내 맘대로 되는 건 없고 숨을 꼭 숨어 더더욱 없어 이미 투섭인 던져지지 오래 건물 대단히 들려가겠지 고민들의 구하려니까 만들어낸 상상의 늪 고민보다 더 걱정지 마렴처럼 손을 쳐봐서
We are young and wild and free 답도 없는 고민 그 속에 빠져있지만 경계선 위에서 위태롭다 해도 웃고 떠들며 바람을 가르자 때론 바보같이 멍청이 달리기 실수한 눈물 속에 we just go So what
Yay! Hello, welcome, K Talk Live. Hello, my peeps, because I recognize these people's names. Please, in the chat box there, please engage and tell me where you are calling in from. This is a special edition of K Talk Live because I don't normally do it on a weeknight, but it is a weeknight work day because, it's like 9 a.m. Korea time. So second half of my day begins now with you guys. Welcome to Bangtan Belongingness. That's the name of today's show. We'll be talking mainly about BTS, but also weaved in a lot about mental health. So today, a little extra, it'll be Nuna's Nunchi, Jeannie Chang, but Therapist Hat is officially on. So I will talk from a therapist perspective a lot today about the questions and topics you have. I have it here because I decided to do this last minute. I had to give my producer 0 time. So I'll be reading your questions and topics off of my notes that I took that was online. And then I'll do my best to answer everyone and talk about things that are on your mind. So that said, the chat box is for you guys to put in any questions that you may have as I go along. Even if you didn't put it online, please put it in the chat box. And hello from Toronto, Costa Rica, Montana, Minnesota. I see the people I know. I'm more from Toronto. You guys need to meet actually. And maybe you guys did meet at an event, or I think you guys were at a different event in Toronto. Sorry, I'm talking to myself. And hello, I love it. Thank you. Guys, still engage on the chat box. Okay, so hello, London. Okay, so a little bit later for you. It's 8 o'clock or 8:05 Eastern time. Let's get started. Okay, so let's start with, first of all, 6 out of 7 members back. We've had 2 back for a while. And then literally yesterday and yesterday and the day before, 4 more came out. So a lot of hype, a lot of, I would say, exciting emotions, right? And if you're in Seoul, yeah, those people in Seoul, I'm just saying, and my team is there, they're having a lot of fun. Yeah, it's okay. I don't feel FOMO, just a little bit. But I do have I'm here because I have family stuff here and a big event this particular weekend. There's Festa. My event is family. And I think one of the things I want to talk about is how sometimes you can have really positive emotions. Like you're so excited about things. Like for me, family stuff. For you guys, BTS Festa, especially if you're there. And I know a lot of people are there. But it can still be overwhelming. There's a lot of, just because they're positive, as in you're excited, exhilarated, anxiously anticipating, right? A lot of emotions at once can also be overwhelming. So I wanted to also address that from the get-go, that there's just a lot of emotions happening. And I'm also mentioning that because as soon as they're discharged, right, we literally saw them, then they go, within an hour or so, they're on a Weverse Live together before, and then I'll talk about RM's privately. They all did their own private lives. But then did they? I don't know if Jimin did their own. Did he do his own? I was like falling half asleep with some of them, but I did catch what I needed to catch, particularly about RMs. So I'll address that. Hello. Hi from Massachusetts. Oh, hello, honey. Hello from Massachusetts. Yeah, and I wanted to bring that up because those feelings don't I guess I would say sideswipe those feelings, because the positive feelings do get overwhelming, and then the overwhelmingness kind of, in some sense, takes over. And when it takes over, then it becomes overwhelming and less about the positive feelings. That makes sense. So we have to acknowledge that this is a lot all at once. And I want us to be wary of that. Like, I want us to be aware of your emotions. And even if they're high, it's very important to acknowledge that high emotions can add to a lot on your plate. Okay, let's start with my thoughts. I will bring up my thoughts first. Oh gosh, there's so many thoughts, and then I have to address your thoughts. Okay, let's talk about RM's Weverse. I saw it several times because I wanted to. And then second of all, just to get the gist. No, we're talking Korean language, Korean culture. I think he spoke just a wee bit of English because his English is really good, but he spoke in Korean, understandably so. It's his primary language. And so as he's sharing pretty freely, if you don't see the subtitles and you're engrossed in how he's sharing, he's kind of comfortable, actually. Comfortable, even though he's saying, oh, this is hard, or this is a little bit awkward. I mean, yeah, because he's going on live and it's awkward. Anybody would feel awkward, including myself, if you're talking about your emotions, right? And you're being very vulnerable. That's not like a natural everyday moment thing. So he did it, and I watched him, seem pretty natural. And, even pouring a drink and having that drink. So clearly he was trying to create this atmosphere that was casual, warm, heartwarming, and wanting to just invite Army into his home. I actually cracked up when he said, I turned off, this is cultural. You turn off the air conditioning, it gets really hot. You have the air conditioning on and it gets super cold. That's literally how it is in Korean apartments. So I just thought that was funny. And now let's talk about his English language. It makes sense. He wanted to switch from English to Korean. I think he probably could have done the whole thing in English. But if you're really wanting to get your emotions across, be as authentic and genuine as possible, and he even indicated that. He's like, I want to be authentic. I think that meant with not necessarily he was going to say all this bad things or maybe reveal bad things about the military. I took it as he really wanted to be free to think and share in his primary language. And I totally get that, because half the time when I'm in Korea, I'm like, I need to speak English, to get out what I really want to get out and all the nuances. There was times when he talked about the culture of the military and, conversations he was having and a lot of cultural things, and then how he was prepping for the album. He was sharing a lot, right? Kind of all at once. He needed to say that in Korean because he was just processing all that and maybe really didn't get a chance to share. So I wanted to say, without stating how everybody feels about being sad and heartwarming, as I watched it again and put my therapist cap on, I actually thought you just got him right out after the military. We're talking 18 months, and he went right onto a live within 12 hours. So of course you're getting fairly raw, not scary emotions. People were like, I'm so sad for him. I'm scared. Yeah, I was sad, and I'll share what I was sad about. And I think I indicated in the reel that I posted last night, but I really was more, I was comfortable watching him process very authentically immediately after leaving the military. Now, generally, normal people don't do that. Or if they're civilians, they come home, they're coming home to a normal life. Does that make sense? This is BTS. So they go right out, and there's thousands of cameras, maybe not thousands, but hundreds, and then people there. And so can you imagine? So you're processing that. And I was watching RM, and already I sensed something. So part of what I think this is, okay, therapist cap on, because I want you guys to know I'm talking from a therapist perspective, that when I see him with the saxophone, it is his way of self-soothing, bringing that out. So I was watching that and going, and it kind of hit me this time around as he was discharged. We saw it before when he greeted Jin. This time around, I sensed this is why he has it, to soothe himself. And then later on, he's sharing a little bit how that felt. I think they all felt awkward. Well, wouldn't you if you're coming right out of military? So let's kind of give him that. They did pretty well though, but sure, it's awkward. But that was I want to share that about RM with the saxophone. I think that saxophone is getting to be pretty meaningful. I mean, he learned it in the military, and then so you saw him take that out. It was immediately out as he walked out. Think about that. So that's his, I would say, very brave and bold way to soothe in front of the media, hundreds of people. I'm going to play the saxophone, and this is how I'm going to come out. I wanted to mention that. The other thing I wanted to mention was I did not like all the translations in the Weverse. Not like I'm an expert translator. And I'm going to say My primary language is English. My first language was Korean, but I still understand enough as a Korean American and understanding the culture fairly well. When I see certain things, I'm like, that's not kind of what he said. It wasn't completely incorrect. Let me say that. But there's cultural nuances in language and behavior and thinking in any culture. And you guys here understanding a little bit more about the Korean culture through BTS and K-dramas or K-pop, there are, the nuances, right? You're like, oh yeah, that's what they meant, but they said this, like oppa or 언니 and hyung, and Netflix, they'll say the name and you guys all go, really? They didn't say the name. They said nuna, right? They said 언니, that kind of thing. He said 눈치. So I'm like, pause. Let's go back to what he said. And without the subtitles, what he was saying, if you remember, maybe in the early half of his, okay, I'm looking at your comments. Yes, just okay. So let's suffering, struggling. Yeah, and he shared it. And so of course you'd be very having that difficulty. So thank you for sharing that. It broke my heart. He was told, yes. And I saw that in a reel, and I'm going to bring that up in a second. But definitely the nunchi. This is what he says. This is why I want to share this with you. I'm going to explain his whole, from my understanding. I didn't have this conversation with them. Let's be clear. That when he said nunchi, he said it in the time when he was talking about V. He's like, they asked me to take care of Taeyong. I will also address that. And then I was watching him, and I was watching him adjust well, and I was struggling. And this is how Taeyong is, and this is how I am. And then nunchi, and he said, yeah, with my nunchi, bring how I felt with my nunchi. This nunchi, nunas nunchi. Nunchi is. It can be in the subtitles. I saw quick-witted. Now, that's kind of like nunchi is like quick to kind of think and act and maybe perhaps observe and do all this. But in RM sense, when he's sharing that, is a very Korean perspective of nunchi, where it can be a little bit taxing and wearing. There's all sides of nunchi. How I use it in my work can also be taxing and wearing. If you're coming to me and I sense something's off, but you're telling me it's great, but you're off, nunchi. I feel a little heavy going, oh, this person's not telling me the truth, but they're saying this is what it is. Does that make sense? RM was indicating with his nunchi halfway through the live that, with my nunchi and how I feel, and sensitive was the accurate word to use that translated into the subtitle. So yes, that's the word to use, but it's very different to how we might say it. There's many things, it could be bad, good. He shared it as understanding that's who he was. So I took it as he's self-aware and introspective at that moment. But when he said nunchi, that's when I felt heavy, because the translation was quick-witted. He meant he observes and feels everything. He notices things that perhaps people don't. In K-dramas, people make fun of people, the characters, if you don't have nunchi. They're like, oh my God, you have no nunchi. I think I just saw it in Tastefully Your. Everybody mentions nunchi at least once in a K-drama. Like, oh my goodness, like, did you not check your nunchi? Or like, do you not have this nunchi? It can be, it's one of those things that Koreans will say and they will criticize, right? Because it's known as the Korean concept. Some people say superpower. RM is very aware that his nunchi, and he's aware of what that does, but it's not bad. He just feels it and sees it and notices it, takes it all in. That is a very Korean way. Not good or bad. Sometimes I would just say, I'd like you to navigate that, because that can make it heavy. Hence why he was sharing some of his struggles. Does that make sense? Yeah, he reads the room, and that's just actually the superficial. Nunchi is like even absorbing, going, yeah, they're really upset. What can I do to help them through their upset? Their feelings upset, being upset. That kind of thing can be nunchi. It's just how you separate it. I'm just become very good at separating, because I'm a therapist. I have to separate what I hear with my personal feelings and me as a person. So hopefully I'm clear about that. Okay, let's talk about V. And so we felt it. So I was watching with my husband. We were both like talking to each other. We're like, oh, so Korean, so Korean. I mean, we can say that because we're Korean. And I want to be very clear. Just because we're saying, oh my gosh, that's so Korean. And there's so many times as a business leader in Korea, I've shared with my tour folks, there's a huge struggle as a Korean American female. I bring that up because I'm like, hello, I'm not invisible. Like, what'd you just say? So I relate a lot to some of that angst. And what he was sharing was not angst about the culture. We just felt the angst because we could see the high expectations. When he was asked to look after V, that's actually very normal, very expected. And I think he was okay with that. It's just that, and then he observed him and saw that he's doing well. And then of course he processed going, he's doing well. I'm older than him. How come I'm not doing well? Right. But that is the norm. Like, hey, look after your hube, look after your tongsang. You're older. I got that. I still get that in my family. Oh, you're older though, so you should know better. Right. That's just the typical Korean thing. Again, anybody could see this. Oh my gosh, that's bad. I refrain from that because that's part of the culture, but it can be, yes, definitely heavy. And an expectation that I would say is burdensome. So we navigate that, but that's always going to be there. And especially in the military, you hear stories all the time. Obviously I didn't serve in the military, but I hear from so many people, Korean national men, who talk about it. There's a hierarchy. You see it in K-dramas. If you see it there, it exists. So obviously it's dramatized in dramas, but so that I think obviously put that a little bit more going, oh, I have to take care of, my huba there, or like my tongsang. I am his hyung. He's right there. They're in the same, not same unit, but same, what do you say? Same section or whatever, the military, there's a word that he used, but he was there enough to see and observe him. So I know people are like, oh my gosh, that makes me upset. But that is, if you watch K-dramas and see even the hierarchy in BTS calling each other hyung, that is what it is, right? And so I think that's part of the culture. I'm not dismissing that. I wanted to explain that a lot of it's cultural. And even him sharing, don't jump too much to conclusions that he was trying to say things and he was hiding things and it was worse than it is. Not like, well, we may never know. Really, you don't really know, but I'll take it for what I see. I feel like RM was pretty honest in how he was experiencing things. There is a pressure. He came in as BTS RM. They come in as BTS, and clearly with all the hype surrounding their military enlistment, imagine coming in and everybody, civilian to military folks, know about them. So there's that pressure there, and so he was alluding to that. There are other K-pop artists that have also struggled with that. I think G-Dragon had something. It was like, a few years back, but I guess he felt a little bit, I don't want to say invaded, but there's privacy and you're coming in there as somebody who's part of the military, but they saw him as G-Dragon, right? And then someone mentioned on my post and reminded us about what happened to Taemin. So really, I think he actually also had struggles with mental health conditions and was very open about them too. And again, it's great. And then I think he was actually transferred to more public service, but things like that, it's understandable. Why? Because they're coming in. This is where the identity, thanks for sharing that. The identity thing is very important. You can't, I wish they would reworded it. Oh, we know you're BTS RM and we respect that. This is me envisioning how a conversation could go, and really appreciate your music, even if they don't really listen to it. But here we are all part of the same troop and we're all brothers. And technically you're the, a junior rank than this person. So, and that, I think everybody knows that, like BTS clearly knows that. So I think that would have been better, because even the word he used, it was accurate with the subtitles. Forget it. Can't forget it. And I think that's why I shared about it. That's where things went wrong. That's just my opinion. Actually, no, I would say that flat out. That's where things went wrong. You tell somebody to forget who you are. Yeah, you're not BTS RM here. Maybe he's not, but he's Kim Namjoon, and he's still Kim Namjoon outside of BTS, right? So that was a lot of like, yeah, I'm not. And then when he cracked me up when he said, but I'm BTS. I didn't take that as an ego. Not like people took that. I took that as that is true. You are. And so you have a different experience, life experience coming in. So I think it makes sense to have a harder transition. Yeah. And so I wanted to share that. That was that. I just wanted to share. I don't want to jump too much to conclusions of what some people said. Oh, was there something worse in there? I go, no, I think, and let me talk about the insomnia. I think the Korean culture wise, he also wants to be polite and not blast the military. There's some things to say. And also he's saying it right out of the military. So remember circumstances matter in what you share. So if someone comes to me immediately after trauma, it's very different than the trauma 3 years later. Does that make sense? It's still perhaps just as triggering, but they may share it very differently and process very differently. I think that's very important. Let me see if I'm mentioning anything. Yeah, maybe same division. There was a word he used in Korean. Maybe I was thinking it's basically the same, not the same troop or unit, but maybe overall unit. Yeah, enough that he could keep tabs on him. So again, he shared it And I think he shared it very matter of factly. Yes, part of the culture. This is what I got to do. And so some people who aren't familiar with that can find it rough that you're like asked to be responsible for somebody. I will say growing up, it was taxing, for people to be like, but you're like the third oldest grandchild. So you need to do this and I'd be like, I don't want to. Right. So I had a little more excuse. I'm like, I'm in America. Why can't I be like that? But totally, we got that as part of the Korean diaspora in the US, that expectation of family. I'm going to start answering your questions now. That's a good point. Lost his leadership role. Well, I would say it was temporary on hold as BTS, but I believe he was proud of how he, navigated the military. He didn't say that. Koreans aren't big on saying things like that, but I kind of that was my illusion. And guess what? If he was talking to me and he was like, yeah, and then becoming a sergeant and then learning saxophone, I'm like, oh, isn't that cool that you learned that? And then you got to move up in the ranks. That's what I would say if I was in a session with him, just to point it out. Because again, culture is you don't say that. It's very humbling and you're not supposed to say that, right? And I don't think that's always healthy. Okay, here is a good question. Why is it that we sometimes unfairly perceive the one that is most open about their feelings, experiences, maybe weaker, even the weakest? You know what? I was very surprised. Okay, so this is what I do not doom scroll. I don't go on to comments. Actually, I missed his Weverse live the moment because I think I was in session. So I didn't see it till later. So I didn't get to see the subtitles live. So I didn't get to see comments and it's a little overwhelming, right? I don't generally read comments, but I've heard from you guys, and then maybe I've seen some comments on YouTube as I was replaying things. People saying, oh my goodness, it was more out of worry. You guys are worried. Oh my goodness, I'm sad. I'm heartbroken. But I feel like this could help you. I mean, the very thing that you guys love about them is that they're authentic and they share authentically in their songs and they connect well. That's truly, I would say, a gift. And so I think more that, again, keep in mind, he just came out of the military and was just being very honest. And I'm hopeful. This is if after he was done and he was like, oh gosh, I'm a little embarrassed. It's hard to go live, right? So he's just being very honest, going, okay, how is that? Perhaps I would have said, oh my gosh, well, how do you feel? Like, how are you feeling right after the live? I would hope that he would say, yeah, definitely. I mean, I was embarrassed, but actually, like, I feel better. I'm assuming that's what they would say, where I got that out to Army. So perceiving that to be weak, well, I can't change people's opinions. People will continue to think, wow, Jeannie's going through a lot because she shared this. And that's their opinion. However, I think, and this is the best quote ever, vulnerability is your greatest measure of courage. Vulnerability is your greatest measure of courage. That's not from Jeannie Chang. That's from Brene Brown, who I admire. That I use all the time. I'm like, yeah, but sharing authentically in a moment that was pretty vulnerable right after coming out, 18 months. Now, if he shared it a week later, it might have been different. He shared it immediately. And I think that is very brave. And I actually think that's how he wanted to connect. Missed you guys, missed us, right? And I think that's really, 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 really important. So that it's sometimes unfairly perceived. My answer to that is yes. And I think it's not unfortunate. What's the word? Sadly, we can't do anything about that. We cannot change someone's mind about how they share something. In fact, people are still going to continue. Why'd they share that? Oh my goodness. They're talking a lot about diets. Okay, I'll talk about that too. They're being as authentic as they can with the live rolling. Actually, I was surprised at one point. I'm like, did they forget they were on camera? Not bad, just because it was just them talking. Yeah. So that's my answer to that. And I just think if you're confident, if you're confident in what you're sharing to be true and that your purpose of sharing is to connect and also process for, I guess, the value of connecting with your community or audience or friend, then I believe, and I've seen it, that you will feel better once you share and be vulnerable. And guess what you do? You open up vulnerability to others. Meaning you lead by example. I see this all the time in my workshops. Everyone's hesitant when I ask them a direct question. What's been the most stressful thing for you lately? Everyone's like, whoa, Jeannie's asking this in a corporation. And I just wait, looking around. Then when one person shares, I'm like, yeah. And then they share. And then you see 3 more hands. Then you see 4 more hands. That is wonderful to see. So that ripple effect of vulnerability, authentic genuinity, and just being honest and real when sometimes you can't be is contagious. So that's what that is. And that's what I had to say about that. So the concern is valid, but see it as, wow, it's hard to trailblaze. And that's what he's doing. And he is also a leader, and leaders have it tough. I mean, you're a leader, so everyone looks to you. So of course the stress is more. So I'm not saying the other people, other BTS members is less, not at all. Just, as a leader looking out after everybody, being the spokesperson, lots of pressure, right? Normal pressure in that sense. Here's one. Examining their focus on their weight and look. Actually, that's like 4 or 5 questions. Talking a lot about their face. Well, I took it as they're being really real. Honest. I want to eat that. I was cracking up. I'm like, clearly they're hungry. I'm glad they're eating. Koreans do love to eat. You know that. It is very Korean. The first thing I will say when I see relatives that I haven't even seen in like a month, they're like, oh, you look tired. Right? Or they'll be like, oh, did you gain some weight on your face? Yeah, it's a Korean thing. Yeah. Or you look too skinny. You look like, I think one time you look emaciated. I was like, oh my God, what? So nothing is technically, I don't want to say nothing's not good enough, but it's a very cultural thing. I just like it. Like who likes it? Right. And sit there, you get grouchy when you're like, I haven't seen you, auntie, in forever. But then that's what they say. Kind of alluding to that. The culture is very much focused on that. I mean, you see it in the K-dramas. You see how wonderful they look, right? They work hard at that. So I think that was coming out a little bit. They're also coming out of the military, so conscious about what they know how to translate to music and art. And I think they were just talking freely. So I'm talking from a Korean American perspective. I just thought it was funny. I'm like, that's so true. Oh, you felt, RM, you felt like your face was bloated? Yeah, I mean, it was like first thing in the morning, right? And so I just thought it was funny that he said that. Sometimes I think it's refreshing that they can say that and they're thinking about it. It's a lot. It's a lot to take. Isn't it refreshing when men talk about it? Women talk about it with ourselves, right? You think about it. We're like, oh my gosh, I hate the way I look in my dress. We'll say that, all this stuff, even talking about my hair. I'm like, hate my hair, things like that. But it's refreshing to see BTS do that too. And be very real. And I guess they're thinking about it because they're probably going to be, eventually practice. I say eventually, I hope that's the case. I hope it's not like today that they'll be practicing, so I hope that they know that they'll take some break, but they're thinking, okay, in like this amount of time, we're going to be on stage or we're going to be rehearsing, getting back in shape in a different way with dancing. So that, and then and maybe they were just being honest. Maybe they wish they looked better. I just think aren't you honest about that? I feel like I thought it was very refreshing. Like when we say, oh my gosh, I don't like the way I look. I always say this. I'm not liking my hair. It's much better now, my haircut. But we're really real. So I feel like great. So again, what you love about BTS is all the stuff you're talking about. I think the military gets a lot of flack, rightly so, because of the history and what you see in K-dramas like DP. But I don't think it's quite like that anymore. I say that as in it's not as horrific, but there is still the hierarchy. I say this cautiously because it's just what I hear. And so some changes have been made, and actually I heard much better, but still you have that. And actually you have that in the US military too. So it's there. It's just the environment, right? Of the ranks. And if everything's by rank, then of course you have that. So I'm sharing this with you because I think that's just the part of the whole conversation and mood of today, of why you heard just in the last couple of days of what they were talking about. Yeah, he also said he got 1 hour sleep. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me talk about his sleep. That is what I brought up. Yes, I'm concerned about that. You can go mentally insane after 3 days of no sleep. So when he shared that he literally thought he was going to die, I kind of believe it. So that was concerning. And insomnia or just sleep adjustment, sleep apnea or whatever, all the physical conditions too, can be debilitating. Do you know how important sleep is? I mean, I'm going to say critical. I mean, it's in all my licensure therapy workshops. There's like sleep talked about with something like focus on like depression, sleep, anxiety. Sleep is so important. So of course, the less you sleep, the more cranky you get, the more you misinterpret things, the more you misjudge people's faces. So I can only imagine what that was like. And then it's a vicious cycle. You're like, I can't sleep. Then you worry about the fact that you can't sleep. Have you ever been through that? I have, where I'm like, I've not suffered from insomnia, but just being like, oh my God, I gotta get up in 5 hours. I gotta get up in 5 hours, and then 4 hours, and then 3 hours, and then you don't sleep at all because you're stressed out about that. Yeah, I think that's what he was going through. He shared a lot about, I told you, his nunchi, how he processes things. So that's his personality, processing and thinking more and more and more. The external factors he talked about, what was in the news, he processed that, and then the expectation. So a lot was coming at him, and his personality happened to be just impacting his sleep. And it's true. Once you get fearful of something, it can make it very dysfunctional in your life, where you're afraid of the very thing that you're afraid of. So for instance, he was afraid of going to sleep, or he was afraid he couldn't sleep. So then he couldn't sleep, right? It's that self-fulfilling prophecy. So I love that he shared he's getting help. I mentioned, so therapist cap back on, because I'm trying to be therapist, but also Jeannie Chang, the speaker. I would have said, yeah, that's great. In fact, I'd say you're having sleep problems. I'm not a psychiatrist, so I don't dispense meds, but I'll say I'm going to send you to XYZ psychiatrist to talk about your sleep issues. I do think you need some sleep meds, and then come back. And then at the same time, that's just as critical, is talk therapy. That's why I was outlining those models. That's just me going, this is what we would do, especially for someone like RM. You need to talk and process things through. Some personalities really need that. And I want to be clear, medication sometimes may be necessary for life, but you should not be only dependent on that. Continue the talk therapy, going through other skills, coping mechanisms each day, because you can't just depend on medication. Even if you need it for the rest of your life or whatever illness, you are still doing other things. For instance, I know tons of people, because I worked in primary care with physicians, who had to manage their diabetes or even heart disease, or cholesterol meds. But meds can only work so much if they're like, I'm still going to eat all this fat and, I don't know, ice cream and bacon every day, right? No. Then it's like, what are the point of taking meds? So the same thing. That's why I said, hey, I'd like that. It can be temporary. You may not eventually need sleep medication because you'll be coping so well. That is very important. Yeah, he's afraid of the night. Exactly. Because he is afraid of sleeping. EQ, and then don't forget his IQ. I did say that to my husband, going, well, don't forget he has a high IQ. A lot of people like that also process and think and overthink. We call it rumination. So ruminating, overthinking, ruminating, meaning like literally sitting on a thought. Here's maybe an example that he kind of outlined. I think he said he was having trouble creating music, which I think was great that he was trying to in the military. But I would have said, oh, maybe if I was his therapist, I would give it a break for 18 months. Just you focus on the military, do what you need to do. If you want to, great, but don't feel like you have to, right? And so maybe felt like he had to, and then there's that stress, and then more you ruminate going, I'm not making music. Literally, it begins to consume you. What you focus on magnifies. So that's a little bit of what I believe he was going through. And then the sleep thing. You can go mentally insane. Also, you can completely misinterpret things. I'm not saying he's doing that. It sounds like he's getting help. But when you're not sleeping, then everything's 100-fold exacerbated. And I feel like we all underestimate sleep in our life. Please don't. Don't you feel better? And can't you even do things better when you get sleep? So important. Personal identity shift. So V did mention, he believed his MBTI changed. Okay. I'm going to say something here. Sleep was the main reason he struggled. I know someone who almost died because of lack of sleep, taking 2 pills to be able to sleep. Oh, I was going to say, this person says sleep was the main reason he struggled. His main reason was not sleep that he struggled with. That became a behavioral pattern that happened. How he struggled was perhaps the narratives that he faced and his own thinking of processing the narratives of things like, hey, you're not BTS-RM. This is who you are. Do this. And then perhaps feeling pressure of people going, oh, you're RM, and people watching him in the military. Gosh, can you imagine what that's like? Stressful when he maybe just wants to be himself or just be chill with the guys. All that is what exacerbated and led to sleep. So sleep is kind of that final result. And that's what I would say we're going to tackle first. We're going to tackle that. And then as we tackle that, we're working through your ruminations and your anxiety and all the elevated distressful emotions. V talked about his MBTI changing. Okay. The MBTI, Myers-Briggs, it came out of the field of psychology. So we talk about it as therapists. I don't like the focus on MBTI too much, mainly because it's just a personality assessment. Okay. Your assessments can indeed change, but that's an assessment. So you're just taking a form, like, oh, when you go through this party scene, do you do, you know what I mean? And your MBTI can change from an assessment based on your answers of what you're feeling in that moment. So if you come out of the military and you're feeling a little stressed about a public situation, you put that in. Then it's like, oh, you became an introvert instead of an extrovert. I'm just giving examples. Your personality does not change. So he said his MBTI changed, but that doesn't mean his personality changed. Your personality stays pretty stable. Yeah. You may become, I would say, I'll give an classic example for me. I'm a true extrovert, but overall with my overall work and just me, feeling a little run down if I'm doing too much, I step back from public things when I don't have to do it. But that doesn't mean I'm not an extrovert anymore. I've just changed my behavior to take care of myself. So depending on your actual circumstance and mindset at the time you take an assessment, like a depression assessment or anxiety assessment, I do those assessments too, but those are just, I just see that and take it with a grain of salt. I'm like, okay, I see that. And then I put it down and then I talk to the person. So him saying that it's changed is, I have him do it in, I don't know, let's have him do it in 6 months and see if it's changed again. Most likely so. So those are just loosely kind of maybe indicating, oh, wow, you used to be really fond of these public scenes. Now it's like you don't like them at all, but let's talk about that. But it doesn't mean you literally change from an introvert to an extrovert. Does that make sense? So based on psychology, this is Carl Jung's theory, by the way, the personality types. His book was like this in graduate school. I have it somewhere, but it was like this thick. Swiss, translate to English, specifically states that your personality, like the values, remain the same. Just how you portray them or display them or outline them or what they show out in a certain situation shift. Does that make sense? So I wouldn't say his identity changed, from what I see, extrovert there, but at that moment he didn't. I don't know if he chose to do that. Do you guys know if he chose to do that or if someone made him do that? Yeah. So no, not an identity shift, not a change in identity, just a change in thoughts, mindset at that very moment for his MBTI to change. Yeah. I hope I made that. Hopefully that's understandable. Okay. How does Army reflect and change their actions to be a supportive and healing place for the members? You know what? Let me save that to the end because I'm going to end that on the call to action. How do we prepare ourselves for a brand new BTS? They all changed and grown, and it will be different when they reunite, and that may be tough. I thought that was very interesting. I didn't think about it like that, but I think you're right. Of course they've changed. Again, not necessarily personality. They're still the same people that we've come to love. They've just, in a different season of life. I shared earlier on my story about a season of life. I need us to think that way because you can't necessarily, as difficult as your past life is, it's there, but then you might go, I'm going to reset. That is there. Oh my goodness, I got to start over. That's okay. It's just not necessarily taking away everything you've learned until you're ready. Meaning it might be so painful you're not ready to think about that, but I will encourage you to go, but can we go back to what happened 16 months ago when you're ready? Because then we can reframe that so it doesn't become this burden. So I'm talking about how they've shifted. I think it will be different, but I don't think it'll be different as in, I think we'll hear different music. I mean, that's actually what we hope, right? But I think perhaps their interactions, I felt like they were kind of very similar, maybe just a little bit more awkward and giddy because it was like, trying to acclimate. But I sense similarities, but I also sense that it's great that you brought that up, that it could look different and to be prepared. The only thing to be prepared is the fact that you are suggesting it could look different. Am I making sense? There's nothing specific for me to tell you because I don't know what it's going to look like, except, yeah, you're right. We might hear different. You might be like, oh, that's interesting. That's an interesting song. Oh, wow, the dance looks really different. Yeah, I think that's okay. And I think there's just I will say, I do like looking at their old stuff because oh my gosh, it's like babies, right? And I do feel a little sad. It's like you feel sad about your kids growing up. So that's there too. But I think it's just a new season, new phase, and kind of exciting. That's how RM ended. I do truly believe he meant that as like this hopeful way to end, because that's how you always want to end. But of course, just like you, I don't want it to be like tomorrow. We would personally like it tomorrow. but for their sake, we would like it to be maybe some time off, right? And then get revived, like get a what's the word? Recharged, rejuvenated BTS. You don't want fatigue coming out, and then I think we'll see it. Army should help ease that burden and pressure of being active as soon as possible. We should be constantly reminding them that it's okay to take slow. Oh, thanks for sharing that. I think because of the Korean culture, they look at comments. I think celebrities US wise may see them. I think actually everybody looks at comments on their Instagram or social media, even if you're a celebrity, trust me. But Koreans emphasize it more. They will actually take it and be like, look, we need to change this whole thing because of all these comments. So even in your comments, sometimes when I see I'm heartbroken or I feel sad, it can actually do the do like damage. Okay, damage is not the right word. It might discourage them, even if you're meaning to encourage them. Instead, it could be like, thanks for sharing your experience with not being like too uppity. But when you're saying heartbreaking, I'm really worried, then it then you might make them feel like, oh my gosh, maybe I shouldn't have shared that. Or, and it's such a Korean thing, especially BTS. Oh, I just worried Army. Maybe I worried them too much. That was my thinking, and that's my answer. And you're getting this from me as a therapist. If you came to me, Jeannie, how can I help? I'd be like, you might want to not overly say, wow, that sounds like military was difficult and was terrible. I'm seeing some of that. I'm like, maybe it's more like validating something he just shared. Like, I hope you can sleep better. I'm so glad that you're sleeping a little better. Things like that is what I would encourage. Yeah. Again, think of the Korean culture when you're saying those emotions, then there's that stigma that maybe they shouldn't have shared. I wonder whether RM would have done better if he hadn't been in the band and had a role that would have used his brain more. V seemed to thrive because of his role. Jay came with the same as cooking. You know what? You're right. I thought of that too, but then it's also music and he was learning something new, which is also good for your brain, right? But you're right. I mean, there's always that, but I don't know if he was so much focus on that because he talked about his writing or journaling, right? Which is so RM, I think. So I think it's great. In fact, I think that journal might be full of songs, in the future. He should go back to that and go, what's in there? Gems is what I'm thinking, gems of a thought process. So I can see your thought though. So I appreciate you sharing that. Thinking about the members doesn't like childish. I mean, hello, they're like 30s. They're not, I mean, if you think about 2013 and 2014, when you see them, they are men. So that's some of that, right? And so I think we will see BTS as men. Yeah. Can it be in the beginning of the end for the group itself and them working, doing things alone? Hi from Seoul. I love it. I don't know. I do think they'll be coming together, of course, but they can do that together and also have it separately. They obviously proved that to work. So I hope that's the case. And I think that gives it longevity when they can also continue with their solo careers, but still stay together. I mean, that's like the best of both worlds. It's like 7-member solo tours. Oh my goodness. Can you think of all that? And then like them together, it's just a lot. It'll be a lot for us, right? But yeah, I think that could work. And I'm assuming but we don't know. I don't want to predict, but my hope is that they come together as a group, right? That's what we need. Yeah, new era. I mean, he didn't even say that. Arm didn't say this is a new era. He just said he wanted to start fresh. I like the wording that he said. I think he was kind of alluding. I think there was an interpretation of starting over, maybe what it sounds like, but just starting fresh, new season, post-military. It's almost like me asking, hey, what does the post-military RM look like? Would be one of my questions. What does that look like for you, RM? What does that look like? Kim Namjoon post-military. Let's figure that out. And that's something I would say, and then we uncover that. You don't just do it. He would not be able to answer me, I hope. I'd be like, I want you to think about what that could look like. Okay. Why is there so much unrealistic pressure put on these men? I understand they're famous, but fans in society need to adjust. Well, that would be great. I'm not going to deny that. So if you see that, it's easier said than done, meaning there are people, I know some people who are upset at some fans at their discharge and I guess how they're acting. You have some protective armies, and I aired on that too, going, yeah, that's really overwhelming. So if you can refrain from hearsay, and this might come across obnoxious, but I'm like, unless you're literally talking to them and no, I shared from a therapist perspective what I would say to RM, but I don't want to do too much of that either. So I think some of us oversharing, over talking, over commenting can be a lot, because trust me, they are reading it. Mhm. Or they're reading the comments and very observant. And then we have people who have nunchi like RM, right? And I'm talking processing that nunchi is what I mean. Everybody has nunchi in their own way, but he has that nunchi that can feel heavy. So I would love for us to um, ourselves take that unrealistic pressure. The first thing I tend to notice is we put blame on others. So if I did this, I'd be like, you know what? I'm going to say it comes with you first. It starts with you first. Change begins with me, like Jeannie. Change begins with you, the person. You cannot expect change to happen by everybody else if you're not doing the same thing. So if you're like, oh my gosh, look at these mean comments, but then you're doing the same thing. And I'm going to tell you now, if you're my client, I would literally call you out on that. I'd be like, yeah, so I saw that the other day. And I've gotten good. Now I'm old enough to be in my career, even in a workshop, calling somebody out going, well, the very thing you just did is the very thing I just talked about that isn't healthy. I've said that. So I would do that. I would say, hey, you just said that you didn't like people making these comments and then, haters, but then you just did that to someone else. Yes. So I see that. So I would love us to not do that. Toxicity, what's the word? Like feeds on that. It's kind of like that germ that you're trying to get rid of. You have to get rid of it once and for all, but you have to do that first through yourself. Mental health is a very individual process. Growth, mental health, even wellness, all of that individual. So if you're not taking care of yourself and you're telling somebody, yeah, you need to take care of yourself better, and then they see you doing some awful things, what's that like? Does that make sense? So that's kind of what I do. I'm like, yeah, don't say this to your child and then they see you doing this. Or don't say this, leader, executive, to your employees and then they see you doing the very opposite. I say that all the time, and I say that all the time. So again, how we, Army, can help. Yeah, reflect first before you comment or say something, in a group. That's just fueling things. So just maybe listen to the song, take a break from talking about things. Sometimes they can turn to gossip. I've heard that too. And if I'm not a therapist in that moment, or if I'm not a speaker, I refrain, because that's actually why sometimes these events can overwhelm me, even for an extrovert. I know what I could take. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like turning into some, it turns into gossip when you kind of over talk, overshare. So be careful. And so that's how we can help. It is really about reflecting on our own actions before calling out somebody else. Like, what are you doing? Hey, instead of saying, what are you doing? Hey, what am I doing? Oh, yeah, I could get better at that. Yeah. Also about the unrealistic pressure. Well, hello, K-pop. Yeah, I kind of wish, that's the dream and wish that it would get better. So I'm hopeful, right? As they want to protect their artists and they want to have longevity, sustainability. My hope is that there is more and more resources and understanding and time. I don't know. It's not like I said to Hive, hey, how much time are you going to give BTS? I don't know. But the preference would be, even though we're eager, don't you want longevity? So think of burnout. And so I always say to people, if you want to be sustainable in this career, or, be able to do this for 10 more years, then take 10 months off. That's kind of an example. It's not literally that pattern, but you get the picture, right? So if you don't rest and recover, ain't no way you can perform and give your best. No way. Like, that's like no brainer, but then people don't necessarily listen. So I'll just keep repeating myself, going, okay, again, you're not performing your best. You're actually showing more anxiousness because you didn't rest and recover. And also, rest and recovering doesn't have to be a 6-month rest. It could be, we're going to rest for this time, do this recording, and then do this filming, and then take a break. So it can be a continual thing. I always say I love things to be like in a parallel process. That is actual term in our field. Well, field of family systems, family therapy, which is where I come from. You can do things like this at the same time and this at the same time. Healing at the same time while still, performing on stage, but you're still healing. Just because you're performing doesn't mean you stop healing. So really important that it's going to be like this, hand in hand. Sometimes I just feel like people go, okay, my healing, well, I'll do that in like 2 years, and then I'll do this. I'm like, what? No, I mean, maybe you can sustain yourself for 2 years, but it's going to come at a cost. So I'll be like, why can't you do it at the same time? Take a break, perform, film, take a break. So unfortunately, that isn't necessarily the industry thought for now, but I do believe it's got to shift. And so that's me always just speaking out about that, going, there's no way someone can deal with that. That is why we're seeing some people in some sense crumble or have a hard time or take time off. Actually, and when I see more and more people take time off, you can only imagine what that is. But maybe there should be, actually, this is my perspective, a specific intended time off. After they do this, they're specifically going to be doing this, like 2 weeks off, and maybe they release a documentary, but you may not see them literally live on social media. Does that make sense? And so I wish that was the case. That's just kind of my wish. And it's very purposeful and intentional. When someone tells you, this is our intent, guys, here's our new policy, you know, you're going to have to rest like this for now, and then you're going to do this, and then we're going to give you a break. When it's said like that, whew, so relieving. That's what I hope happens. Yeah. Okay. So, oh, I don't necessarily need my license in South Korea to do what I'm doing. So I can tell you about that. Do I have anything else that I answered? Oh, people were talking about the dieting, skipping meals isn't healthy. Okay, can I just say this? That's us being a little judgy. So if you love them yourselves and like their authenticity, then we also should just not judge. Again, of what them. I just took it as some of it I thought was funny, and them being so honest. I'm like, yeah, like, don't you look at pictures and go, oh my gosh, please, I hate that picture. Like, well, I say it all the time. I'm like, no, I don't use that picture, right? But you may see something and you're like, I hate that. I think that's how I translated it. We do the same thing in real life, so that's what they were doing. They're talking a lot about eating because you just came from the military, so I don't know what they ate, Korean food, but maybe specific Korean food, but they probably missed their own, you know, favorite kind of foods, right? So I think that's part of that. But then skipping meals, and we all know skipping meals isn't healthy, and weight and the focus on weight, of course. And I don't think they don't necessarily think like whether it's unhealthy or healthy, they're just kind of in that place. But culturally speaking, because it's such a high expectation culture of looks and taking care of yourself and how you present yourself. Again, not necessarily, well, actually, sometimes it can be bad, but not necessarily. I'm not here to say, I wish it wasn't the case. That is the case, you know? And so I think that's part of why they said that, because now they're like, oh, now people are going to see us outside the military. We don't have our uniforms. We're going to be wearing our normal cool stuff, right? So I think that's where that came from. But what I do see is a lot of that, judgment of going, the focus on the diet and weight. Honestly, we do. Don't you do that? We kind of do, just to our friends and besties. And that's what, and technically they saw Army as besties. That's why they were doing that, right? Okay, I think I answered everything. Oh, I love this one. They told us to love yourself, love ourselves, but how do we get them to listen to their own words? Well, I would actually say, what makes you think they're not listening to that? Again, this is more about how you perceive what they shared. That therapist kept on. I got more concerned when RM went to the insomnia. And that's where the real struggle was. Those thoughts he had, I feel like that's RM in general. And actually, he even shared, you heard him share about the album process. If you saw his documentary, you'll see the album process and the struggle he had as being a leader. So you kind of already get that. But then going into the military, he already had that album process. So he was coming in maybe at a more vulnerable state. He kind of alluded to that. So what I'm trying to get at is he's being very authentic to where he's at. But I think it's really important to understand, just because they're sharing authentically and vulnerably, yes. And it's difficult to hear because we want to hear happy-go-lucky. That's what everybody wants to hear. Nobody wants to hear about someone's grieving. It's so awkward, right? Even if you understand grief because you've also lost a loved one or a job or whatever, it's still very awkward to hear. So none of us want to go hear them saying this and we're like, oh, we just wanted you to be happy, right? But how you can help them is just accepting that and going, yeah, okay, that's where you're at right now. But I truly believe they do, but how, as in love themselves, but they need to be reminded themselves, meaning let them process and go, oh my goodness, I have this book of, this is what I'm thinking, or I was thinking, I have this book of journaling that I did, all these thoughts. You know, when you read, have you written a journal before? Yeah, when you read it, you're like, oh my gosh, that was so hard. But then those hard things, you're like, oh, but look at where I am now. It's a lot of the work I do, seeing that solution-focused perspective of where you want to be. I'm kind of digressing, but my whole point is to understand what makes you think that they're in a difficult place. They are just processing authentically with us. Actually, it's the healthiest thing you can do. If you don't and you hold it, have you think of that steaming, what is that? What's that steaming pot? Instapot. Like when it's like really, really hot and boiling, or when something's boiling and it boils over because the top's on there. He's just taking off the top. It's still boiling, but it's not flowing over. Does that make sense? That's the best metaphor I can think of. Remembering that book that you gave someone your book for RM. Wonder if he has or read it. I don't know. I haven't heard from him personally. Just saying. Yeah. I also wonder whether this is an opportunity for orgs like Hive to take. You know what? And here's another thing. Society, Korean society has come a much longer way, even within a year. I just want to point that out. Why? Because I've been preaching this since day one of my work. I even take people on tours and talk about K-dramas and mental health. So I am clear on even my intention. And I have seen a difference since literally even 2 months ago, even a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago when I was writing my book, I saw literally people going like K-dramas, like they were like this, K-dramas and mental health. Like I kid you not, Korean nationals. And recently when I said, oh, here's my book on K-dramas and mental health. And they're like, oh yeah, I could see that. Yeah. Like for instance, I think talk about When Life Gives You Tangerines through Korean and you'll just get a great conversation, but very different. So I believe it's more in their thought process. They have to. Their artists are talking about it more and more. We're seeing a crisis happening. So I'm pretty sure they're thinking about it. What they're probably struggling with is how to best do it, right? And that's okay. And I feel like, hopefully in some sense, people collaborating and working things out, how to best do it is what particularly South Korea is still trying to figure out, because historically mental health was not talked about. The US is, I'm going to say this as much appreciated, is much more advanced in that sense. They have many different licensures and trainings, and you have to, before you even graduate from a program, graduate school program, and before you even become a fully licensed therapist, you have all these things, expectations, very different in Korea. So actually, sometimes I'm pretty blunt to like Korean psychologists. I'm like, yeah, I'm better trained than you. I think I said that a couple of times. They were like, I say that to show my appreciation and my education here with this particular field. So they are not quite there with education everywhere else. I mean, they're brainiacs everywhere else, but psychology, not so much. For me to actually tell a psychologist with the PhD, yeah, no, that's not how I would treat that patient, right? I could say it boldly because my training was very focused on people. And that's my comfort level as a family therapist. I just digressed, but hopefully that helped you from a therapist perspective. Are you going to talk about Cheiki and Jimmy? Tell me how you want me to talk about them. I thought I wasn't too worried. I think Cheiki is a little more introverted, right? To me, nothing red flag came out, but tell me what you mean before I finish. I didn't get any questions on that, and nothing came out exactly. I'll pause. Let me take a look at all this here. I hope you're getting excited for your tour. Tastes so good. 2 p.m. did that. Yeah. Yeah. You reminded me of the artists. 2 p.m. I think I brought up G-Dragon. Yeah. There's other examples of artists struggling in the military, and not because, let me say this in a way, not because they're K-pop artists and, oh my goodness, they can't like deal with the military. They're also not like that. It's just that they are artists and what's the word? Creatives. And coming in and it's a mandatory military enlistment. You know what I mean? Very different circumstance than somebody else if I think the US, voluntary. This is involuntary. So think of what that's like. You kind of uproot your whole experience as an artist, and then you enter the military, which is a completely opposite environment. So I think that makes sense to me because they're artists on stage. Then they come to this. They have a very different perspective as somebody who perhaps is like a civilian and comes into the military, right? And so they're coming in with very different things. Hopefully, that wasn't even a question, but I wanted to bring that up, that I feel like we need to be aware of that. Did I answer? Hi, everybody. Any other last minute questions? I was like trying to finish in an hour. It's like a little hour, over an hour and a minute. Thank you for joining. I'm always here. And if you have any further questions, feel free to chat. I think I emphasize what I really needed to emphasize with the Korean culture, particularly that please take it with a certain lens from the Korean perspective. They're still Korean, and so That's what they're going to air towards, as in airing towards, oh, call to action was Army. Thank you. So it's hard, right? It's not like we literally can come up to them. You can, I guess, at their concerts and stuff, right? But I would say kind of what I just shared. My wish is armies around the world, if you're loving the same members, why is there such discrepancy in behavior? Like literally, if I had you guys in my session, I'd be like, okay, let me talk to you about this, right? I can be very direct. I'm fun but direct. But I would say, yeah, why did you have to do that and say this to this army community? Why is that there? That, I would say, insincerity or, I don't know, meanness isn't healthy. And then that unhealthiness just translates over to them in a very indirect way. When your own community, I'm going to give you an example. If my own community, my tour community, or you guys who follow me, if I sense this toxicity that's growing, it would totally impact me. Obviously, I'm a little bit more directly in interacting with you guys because I get to meet some of you guys in Korea, but that's just very not encouraging. So at a very vulnerable time, especially when they feel the pressure to go back and perform. And by the way, Arm said this. Do you remember him saying, gosh, J-Hope's performing, and then gosh, I'm jealous about this. I'm envious. Envious is the word that I would have used. Yeah, he's admitting he wants to perform. So of course, that's great. It's great to hear that. So overall, they want to perform and do this stuff and go on tour and do all their solo tour. That's great. But how we can help is maybe, in some sense, scale back some of the comments. They will never see our inside. They're not going to see this. I don't know if they're going to see this, but they're not going to see maybe our inside chats on Instagram or Facebook or what else is on, like Discord or Patreon. They may never see that, but you can definitely be in control of how you're going to be positive, not positive and authentic positive. I meant positive as in not, talking bad about someone else or saying this. That I see, and I really don't like that. And I think that carries over, even if you think it doesn't, I think it carries over outwardly. So it's kind of like how you are within a secret, quiet place. You have to check yourself, because how you show that is how you show that. So it's really important that I also check myself. Like, hey, how am I doing? Oh, I'm not so good, right? Then I have to check myself first before I help somebody. So really important that we as Army can do that. Can you do that though? So I hope I'm being blunt. I'm pretty much saying, please refrain from comments over hearsay, engaging in some other person's community, and saying something. Say within your safe space. And if you can't say something that I think would be encouraging to the actual artist or their work, then maybe don't say anything. And guess what? When you don't say anything, it actually that perpetuates a behavior where you can refrain and kind of be like, let me be introspective. Let me look at myself. Let me look at RM. What are his lyrics saying? What are they talking about in their music? We also can go back to their songs and go, let me think about this. I think it's really important to, respect their space. I think someone said this to me. I can't remember, it was in a workshop or session, but like I didn't stop showing my irritation because they were like, well, they said something and I went, oh, so did you speak to them the other day? I literally said that. And I think it wasn't a workshop because I think there were a couple other people there. There were a few other people there. And so let's respect their space. We do know a lot about them based on what they've shared, but you don't know everything. Their personas, that's what they show. It's authentic, but give them the privacy of just a normal person, right? At the end of the day, they're just a person that happens to be BTS that's very talented, right? It goes like layers. And I think that's really important. Respect their privacy. I think a lot of people said something like, who do people think they are that they own them? I don't like that language either. It's just more, maybe you just feel so close to them. That's fine. I kind of word it that way. But the closeness can err on the side of like unhealthy and stalkerish. And so if you can't see that behavior, then maybe someone around you can point that out. Does that make sense? Sometimes you can't see your worst behaviors, but if I saw that, I would say that. I'd be like, yeah, no, stop. I've said this, stop watching K-dramas. Hello, I have said that. So you bet I'll say things like, not stop listening to the music. I might be like, hey, why don't you stop, conversing this community? Clearly it's not healthy for you. If this is how you're feeling, that you feel like you have every right to follow them, and there are stalkers. Yeah. There are out there. And again, I hope that they get their space. Yeah. Being a good steward of the title Army involves embedding the positive qualities and practices associated with the BTS fandom or positive effect we can have on other armies while also being mindful. Thank you. I comment with kindness on auto posts. We don't know them, but they need to hear we support them. Yeah, support them. Say, even repeat their lyrics. Hey, you're validating, repeat maybe something they shared going, thank you so much. I love to hear that you're journaling. Me too. I think I've seen that too. Those are very encouraging. But remember I said refrain a little bit from like, I'm so sad for you. That's just the Korean thing is more like, oh, they're sad. I think I'm going to repeat that again. Oh no, I don't want to worry, Army. Oh, maybe I shared too much. Just very Korean thinking. And we kind of think that too. If someone said that to me, someone says, Jeannie, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry you're stressed out. I'll be like, oh, did I share my stress too much? Yeah, I think that too. So I can understand that. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, I got to stop talking. Let me know if you have more questions. And then, I still have time. I have a meeting in an hour. I can keep talking. No, I'm still beginning my day with Korea, folks. I'm always here. DM me anytime, and I'll do more of these. But we are excited they're back, and we just do our best to show our excitement in a healthy way. That's what I can think of. Have our own boundaries. They need their space. They need to take their time, figuring things out. And we'll be behind them figuring out, hey, what does it look like for us to post-military? And then we still have Suga. Oh, so I might have to go back on a live at that. By then I'll be in Korea. So maybe I'll be in Korea. And we'll talk about when he comes out June 21st. Thanks, guys. Love you all.